Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Again, welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Mike Graff. I make music as dear gravity. It is great to be here together with you. I am so excited for you to get the chance to hear from Jay Cliffen today. Before we dig into that conversation, I want to say a huge thank you to All Ambient. That's all-ambient.com. What an incredible music licensing site for all things ambient and cinematic music. If you are a creator and you are tired of digging through catalogs that have a bunch of music that might not be the best fit for your project, for any project, All Ambient is absolutely the perfect licensing site for you. Every song that's on All Ambient has been expertly curated. There is nothing on the site that doesn't feel great. And even better is that there are curated song bundles that are all designed around an individual theme or feel that can fit your film, video, your project perfectly. It's absolutely a great solution to your music licensing needs. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. That's all-ambient.com. And if you use the promo code podcast25, you will save 25% on your order. That is a huge savings on an already great deal for some incredible music. And fun fact, when you license your music on a site like All Ambient, you can know that you are directly supporting the artists and allowing them to continue to make more and more music in the way that they do, so that you can continue to make great projects in the very way that you do. What a cool thing. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. My guest today is none other than Jay Cliffen. Jay is an incredible ambient artist who not only brings a unique angle to what he does in the artist world, but also has a lot to say about all the different things within the music industry ballpark itself that he touches and that he gets involved in. Jay is a mastermind. That's not exaggerating. I 100% mean that. I am really excited for you to hear from Jay Cliffen today. And just in case you're listening for it, we had a little bit of a recording glitch on the back half of this interview. We did wind up re-recording the second half of this. So if you hear a difference in the microphones, know your ears are not lying to you. Yes, in fact, we did record this over a couple parts, but man, I'm really glad we wound up being able to rescue the entire conversation. Jay is gracious, understanding, and just really wise. Really glad we got the chance to dig into everything that we did. I cannot wait for you to hear my interview with Jay Cliffen. Well, folks, I have the honor today of being joined by the illustrious, that's a good word, but I'm positive that it fits perfectly, the illustrious artist, Mr. Jay Cliffen himself. Jay, welcome to the All Ambient podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Looking forward to it. It's been great working with you guys. I'm glad we were able to get the time to sit down.
I love the family. It's growing. It's such a good thing. Jay, you're coming to us from Ontario, Canada. Yes. Yeah. Amazing.
In the Ottawa Valley. So it's a bit more of a rural community. So I kind of got out of the city recently. And very recently, just like end of December, moved out here. And yeah, been very exciting. Yeah, I love it.
Have you been in that area for your whole life? I mean, we'll get into the life story a little bit, but are you kind of around the area that you're in right now, or, you know, the city and now going more rural?
I grew up like 40 minutes from this area, but I've spent like the last 10 years in cities. Yeah. So I was in Toronto for most of the time. Then I moved in like 2019 to Kingston, Ontario. Yeah. So it's a smaller city, a few hours from Toronto. Yeah. So it's kind of like gone from the big city to a smaller city and now just to the country.
It's a nice progression to go. I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know what the next step is, where you're just living in the woods by yourself or something with
pretty close. It's just, they're right there. But I like getting out there and it's just great. I like nature. And so being real close to it's a nice change from the city for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get to talk about a lot of great stuff, and I'm really excited for it. But before we get to all of that, I would love to hear a little bit more about your music story, like where the journey in music began for you, however far back we need to go for that, if it was very, very early childhood. What's the music origin story in your life? Was there a moment where you were just first starting to discover like, wow, this is going to be a pretty important part of what I do forever? But yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so I guess it started kind of when I was like 13, 12, 13, kind of in that age. I didn't come from a musical family. I didn't start when I was like really, really young, but I think it kind of happened when my older brother, who's like a couple years older than me, he started buying CDs. And we had, so you guys had MTV in the States, but we had something called Much Music, which is like our version of MTV.
Right.
So there was like a lot of music videos. And of course, the music videos were like the advertisement for the CD.
Yes.
So of course, we would watch our favorite music videos and go out and buy $15 or $20 CD for that song. And so my brother was like, starting to build up this CD collection. And I got to hear a lot of music that he was bringing home, that way. And I guess I just kind of got there's that, combination of that happening and also just kind of being, like the coming of age, 13, you're kind of starting to be like, you want it like an identity and want to be cool. Yeah. So you're like, I should play like an instrument. And originally I was like, I really wanted turntables.
There we go.
Because I wanted to scratch.
There we go. Yep.
Yeah, there's like Limp Bizkit and all the new metal stuff was happening. And I was like, I want to scratch. But then, my parents were like, that's not an instrument. Like, no, we're not going to what is that? It's funny looking back. It's like, I probably could have had like more success as like a DJ or something. Like scratching, like doing, But then I was like, oh, well, maybe guitar or something. But my brother was playing bass at that time. So he started playing like bass and guitar. And so I was like, well, no, I can't really do that because he's like, that's his thing. And so then drums look pretty cool. So,
all right.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a drum set right behind you right now. In your
so still
space.
playing.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So drums were like my first instrument. So I talked to my parents about that and, I kept bringing it up. So they eventually got me into some lessons, got me the kit. And that was kind of it. I was bit by the bug.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that time. Yeah. Then high school happened. You started meeting other kids at school that played other instruments. You form a cover band.
Oh, yes. What were you covering?
Green Day.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Classic rock, some pop punk.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the classic stuff, some Led Zeppelin, but Green Day, Blink-182, stuff like that. And then, so kept playing and with different musicians in high school and decided that, I wanted to keep doing this and it'd be great to do it as a living. So I just started looking into music performance schools at college and I came across one that was in Kingston actually, but it wasn't just music performance. They actually taught you all the skills you might need as like a musician in a modern time, like photography and videography, digital recording. They kind of gave you like everything, which was really cool. Yeah. And it was there that I actually really got into audio recording. Like surprisingly, I thought I was just going to be like I wanted to be like a session player. I wanted to like play drums for artists and then, Napster and everything. It's like, well, those gigs are kind of gone or there's only like a few of them left or whatever. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should like be like a recording engineer and still do session work or whatever. Yeah, I ended up getting really into like audio recording. And after that college, I went to another college for audio recording specifically.
All right. Yep.
And it was just like a 1-year program that it's just focused on like studio recording and mixing. And that was in Toronto. So I went there and we had like a guest lecturer who is my now current boss. I've been working for him now like 10 years.
Oh, for real? That's
wild. He talked about like licensing music and publishing and like composing for a picture. And I was at school thinking like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to do something with like music and audio production and maybe I'll be like an engineer in a studio.
Yeah.
But of course, like all the studios are shutting down at that time too, all the big ones.
Yeah.
So then he talked about this like publishing and like engineering music, for picture. And I was like, oh, that's a cool area that I hadn't considered. And so I talked to him after the lecture and he was starting a company called Bed Tracks at the time. They were just brand new and they were taking interns.
Ah, yes.
So I interned for a little while, but I should also mention that shout out to Rob McAllister, who I made Beacons with. He interned before me. He actually went to school with me at Harrison Institute. He interned just before I finished school.
World.
And then
That's
he's like,
wild.
he finished his internship. He got hired on. And then he's like, I know you're really interested in working here as well. Do you want to intern? Like I just finished. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So he got my foot in the door there.
Yeah.
So that's how I know Rob. And
I love it.
Yeah. And we put out beacons and here we are.
So what's all on your plate of responsibility at BedTracks? Excuse me for not knowing the answer to this, by the way. I love your moniker stuff and all that, but that you know, part of the fun of these conversations, of course, is to dig into, you know, the even deeper stuff. So so what does BedTracks look like for you? What's the scope of that?
So I'm focused a lot more on the business side. It's a pretty small company. There's about 6 of us. So we're a small team.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've done a lot of different things there. Like at the beginning, I was cataloging music. So composers, we represent music for composers all over the world. I think it's over 400 that we have, and we have like 80,000 tracks in the library.
Yeah.
Non-exclusively, it's all instrumental. We license it out to like all kinds of different forms of media and production companies. But when the composers send in their tracks, we catalog it. We have to listen to everything. We catalog it by different like metadata. You know, we like retitle it usually, you know, assign it the genre and everything like that. So I'm sure you guys are very familiar being on the sync licensing side as well. So I started doing that, and then it kind of morphed into different things related to like marketing. So I got more involved on the marketing side, and then just the music rights, like admin side of it, dealing with cue sheets, because we get cue sheets from all of our clients, and like making sure all of our titles are filled in. And then also just like applying for grants, and it's just really a lot of business development. So that's kind of the side I'm on now. We also consult and help other production companies open their own music libraries and like manage their own like music rights assets and things like that. So I'm like a music rights manager, which kind of encompasses a lot of different things. But
Well, and especially in this day and age when, you know, you just look at the world of content ID and all of that, like I'm sure that, you know, you may feel, and I'm not projecting this on you, but you may feel in the role of a music rights manager where like you just started getting your footing under you, and then all of a sudden there's a whole new shift that just changes it all, and right back to the drawing board. But, you know, a new problem to solve, right? Like, let's figure it out.
It is crazy trying to, because it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
We're constantly dealing with this with clients too. Like they license music from us and it's all pre-cleared, but then they go to post it on TikTok and it gets flagged, and it's like we have to figure out why. We don't know why, but so it's like you got to investigate it and dealing. And I don't know if you've dealt with like TikTok and like who do I actually talk to about this? They don't get back to you very quick. You have a client that wants to upload the video today, and they're going to get back to you in like 14 days. It's just really, and now they might be getting banned. So who knows? Who knows what's going on?
I know that I was just listening to another podcast this morning, kind of exploring the pros and cons of all that. And man, what a world.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm trying to connect dots where they aren't supposed to be, but there is something kind of special about the role that you're in and like on the business side of things, and being able to work hand in hand with a lot of music that's not prominent, not just in the streaming world, but also in the licensing world and the placement within video, film, TV, commercial, like the whole run. That with you being someone who is as creative as you are, to then start looking at the Venn diagram of it and like what is overlapping, where are my interests, and where's the knowledge on the business side perhaps lending aid to what I kind of want to do creatively right now, whether it's, you know, whatever project that looks like. So that's a really unique place that you find yourself in, and I'm sure that it's advantageous in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. And like that's, you know, like indirect way that's kind of what got me into making the music that I'm making now.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I wasn't making ambient music when I started working at BedTracks.
Right.
But I always liked instrumental music. I think coming from like a musicianship standpoint, I was like, more than vocal music, I've always been drawn to like jazz and like, you know, the musicianship there. And then, you know, BedTracks instrumental music catalog. So
Right. Yep.
Because there's always a voiceover going over like what we're licensing it to. It's always background music generally. So then just kind of like having that insider information of like, these are the clients we're working with. These are the shows they're working on. This is the kind of music they're looking for.
Yep.
We have it in the catalog, like we put together playlists for them, but it's like, but I could also be making this stuff too. You know, I could be going home and making a track and then sending it to them.
Right.
So it was a bit of a direct line that way. And that's where I think I kind of got into like ambient music. As you know, having an ambient music catalog for licensing, it gets used a lot in documentaries and everywhere, especially documentaries. Like sometimes the most appropriate thing for a scene, whether it's like scripted or non-scripted or the news or whatever, it's just like it doesn't have to be a lot going on, but like a pad or like just drones. So I'm like, I should, make like a catalog of drones and then you know, ominous drones, like for this investigative journalism thing.
Or just like there's still really, a lot of thought that goes into those. I mean, and you just said it, like even just the subtle little differences and things that are going to make this feel this way, this emotion, that, instead of just, here's a note, I'm going to put a brick on the sustain pedal and walk away. And
there is an art for sure to making even background like production music. Because it still needs to like go somewhere, they still want it to like build and kind of have like not just be like one thing. And sometimes like with different shows, like depending on what it is, they'll have like a track playing in the background for like 2 minutes. If it's like a piece where they're like interviewing different people, it'll be like the same track for like, and with the cue sheets and the royalty side of it. So these broadcast companies, they pay out per minute of music.
Right.
So there's different rates for different channels or different networks. In Canada, we have a few big networks, as you would in the States too, like with CBS and ABC, NBC.
Sure.
But like we have CTV, Global, Bell Media. So I think Global's like $60 a minute. So a music and, if you have a 50-50 split with the publisher, every minute of music, that's $30 for the composer.
Sure.
And if you have a couple minutes in a show and that show plays, a couple times a week and maybe it plays for months or years or whatever. That's
absolutely.
That's
it adds up fast.
And it's not the sexy side of music. That's not the reason people get into music. They don't pick up a guitar and be like, I'm going to make the best background music for a TV show. It's like everyone wants to be on the stage touring or whatever. But when you think about it more, it's like, I don't have to tour all the time and I can, make tracks at home and stuff. And, and if I put them in the right places, they can be, used. And it's just kind of this passive income that grows. With those shows, you can build up that time and it kind of just over the years and over time, it builds up royalties, which,
the snowball grows and the snowball grows. And you hit on something a little bit and I want to explore it. You said something about perhaps not younger musician, but like earlier in one's musical journey, creative journey. For very few people perhaps set out to say like, I'm going to make this incredible music that's going to be behind an episode of Ice Road Truckers or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's, the goal is to provide something for a documentary or a commercial or a podcast or, YouTube video or whatever. But that being said, I think maybe we have this idea that there's a more respected version of being a musician where it's just people who listen to me and wow, look at the streaming numbers that add up and the concert dates and whatnot, as opposed to, well, I make music and maybe not as many people tune in on streaming, but it gets used in the licensing world, that all of a sudden that one becomes, and I'm not even talking about like the money side of things, because man, I like to feed my kids. I like that royalties help me feed my kids. It's great. But even more so, like as a creative flex, I could see, and there is sort of that, baked in subconscious stereotype for some of us, perhaps a lot of us, that music that's used in the production world is like the less creative side or the less, sexy side, which I could understand where you would perhaps arrive at that idea. But then quickly it is dispelled by the fact that, everything that you just said, like the sustainability of it and the ability to provide you as a creator, the freedom and that increasing freedom to do what you were called to do. That's such a big deal. It really is.
Totally. Yeah, I should say that that's kind of how I got into music production. And then it was after a few years of putting tracks and building up my catalog a little bit, I started thinking like, why am I not releasing music like this, like on Spotify? And like, at this time, Spotify was becoming more of a thing, more of a bigger thing. And it's like, why am I not like, I should put this out under my own name. Like I shouldn't just be like ghostwriting or whatever and only putting in these catalogs. And so I started just kind of changing my mindset where I was like, rather than thinking about this is just music that's going to go into the background of a TV show, maybe I'm going to make music that is still instrumental, but people might want to listen to because they enjoy listening to that kind of music.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of artists out there, comes to mind like Boards Canada, big influence, of course, where I'm like, where this music's like, this is like instrumental, like ambient music, but it's really great. And it would be like, oh, it could work in so many different places, like on a production music standpoint, but it's like, but I also really like listening to this as well. So that's where I started shifting my mentality, where I started making just music that I thought was like for myself, that was kind of good and that I thought. And I'm like, maybe it could also go with the catalog, but the licensing side wasn't the focus anymore. So I'm just like, and I think what you were saying there is that, and I think the industry even has kind of, no one really, like even clients, like they don't want to license stock music. They want to use Jay-Z tracks and be like, if they could afford to license it. So I'm like, well, they want to use artist tracks. So I should just make every track as if it were going on an album. And I do release it as an album. And then they can also license it to bonus.
Yep. Bingo.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you start releasing stuff like under your name, under J. Cliffen? Is it like 3 years ago or so? Or did it go further back than that?
I think 2018.
Okay, sure. I probably was looking at the full length release.
But I'd say you're right though. Like with that album, that 2021 album, Half Speed Hard.
Yeah.
That's where like the sound that I feel like is more the sound that I've adopted or I'm like, this is kind of my sound. I don't even want to call it a signature. It's just like, this is just like my,
you sort of arrived.
My kind of like the palette or whatever.
Yeah.
Because before I did put out a few EPs before that were more like, that had more beats in them. They were a little bit more like electro ambient beats. I wouldn't even kind of think of them as being, they're kind of two different things. I was still kind of finding what I like to do. And I've kind of arrived at this very ironically beatless ambient music. Which is, the irony is not lost on me that I play drums, but I have very little percussion kind of stuff going on.
I love that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great album title. The irony is not lost on me. I think they might have to.
I think I'm just,
file that
from playing
away.
drums, I'm tired of the grid. I don't want a grid.
Yeah, I hear you. There is a time and place for sure. And drums were one of my main instruments too. Right after piano, I was studying drums back when I was, starting at 10 and 11, and that was my big drive for a while. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of value in drums, maybe even more so in learning like the rhythmic, kind of the way that it all fits together as a puzzle and how rhythm can play, for you or against you, if used in ways that, are allowing it to communicate a different emotion than you actually want to aim at. So yeah, I love that. And the irony is not lost on me.
It isn't. Really and it's
cool.
funny that you also have a history playing drums, because I've met other ambient artists. So many of them are drummers.
Isn't that
so
wild?
many?
It's like we're detoxing or something. That's funny. Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah.
Man, we'll have to take a poll.
Yeah. I'd be very interested in that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So fun. So I want to get into some of the newer music you've been releasing, but before we get there, I am pretty fascinated, and I want to just hear you explore. There seems to be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be, maybe infatuation's not the right word, but definitely focus given to how cassette tapes play into your whole production process. And I honestly love it. I am here for it. I think it's extremely cool. But tell me a little bit more about the love for tape-driven music, not just ambient, but, period. Just, explore that a little bit with me, because it is prominent in your bios.
Yeah.
Certainly in the stuff that, that you're post on socials. And you can definitely hear the influence, whether it's slight or heavy in what you're releasing. But tell me about the cassette tape journey.
Journey?
Yeah.
I've really liked working with tape loops. I find it's a bit of a parameter, which is kind of nice to have sometimes. Like I've come and gone with tape loops a little bit. I'll use them a lot and make a bunch of tracks, and then I'll, not use them as much. But I really like, so I'll usually start with a tape loop. I'll make varying lengths, like 5 seconds to even like 20-second loops. And I'll kind of play around with a bunch of different ideas until I find something I like. So I'll play around with some sounds, some short ideas until I get something that could kind of loop nicely. Because, you know, if it's going to be running on a loop, you want to enjoy it. Hopefully it's a sound you'd like to listen to. So I'll play around with that for a while until I get something that I really like. And then I'll record that and I'll play around with different tape speeds. So I have a couple different machines, the Tascam's Porta Studio 414, which has a higher inches per second.
Right. Yep.
So it just sounds a little bit higher quality. And there's a pitch knob, so you can like D2, you can slow things down and drop the pitch a bit.
Oh, so cool.
So that can just give everything a completely different vibe. And the 424 Porta Studio has more tape speeds.
Sure,
so it can like, you can get a huge range of like just different feels. So I'll play around with that, and that can dramatically change things.
You have multiple Porta Studios. It's so cool.
Yeah. And I have some other little tape devices, like I have like here, like this like micro cassette, which I played around with a bit.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so this is just like voice dictation stuff that sounds super low quality, and it doesn't always work for what you want. But yeah, it can be cool for like one sound in a mix, just to give it that grit. So yeah, I really like, you know, there's a lot of plugins out there that are emulating that sound, but I really like the real thing, not just for the sound, but like the tactile approach to it. You know, you're not looking at a screen for the time that you're using it. So I feel like that can kind of influence things.
Right.
And nothing really beats the sound. Like, you know, it is the sound that those plugins are trying to get. It's more work, obviously. And yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Man, first of all, I mean, I love what you do with the whole tape loop setup, and you get some really great character out of it. But yeah, I'm completely with you on the idea of kind of getting outside of staring at the screen, like you said, and whether it's the screen or whether it's, you know, even just kind of introducing something new to the way that you create that allows you to just come at it from a little bit of a different angle. I think that there's something really healthy about that. So I love that that's not lost on you, right? Like you're recognizing that there is something about the process valuable to you as an artist and kind of stretching you beyond maybe where you would go if you were to just chuck on a plugin that does a decent job of giving the vibe, but really like going and committing to it, right? Like it's a destructive method in a sense.
Yeah.
It's there. It's baked in the sound now. And I think
that's a good point. That's a good point I forgot to mention too, is that, you have to commit so much to a sound early on.
Right.
So like the sound that you're recording onto tape, and then, you know, you can make adjustments with the EQ on the machine itself before you record it back into the computer. So there's a bunch of like decisions you're making there, and it's a lot harder to go back and try to change that after. You know, I have, like, if I'm really unhappy with it, I'll go back and like re-record it, but it's, you know, it's just a lot more labor intensive than just being able to like move a MIDI note or something. So there's definitely a time and place. Yeah. MIDI is great, and there's so many cool things you can do with it. It's just a different way of working, for sure. Yeah,
what a cool thing. And I mean, you do it so well. Well, man, we do need to talk about an incredible release that came out on Slow Echo recently, and that, of course, is Beacons, your collab with none other than Rob from Music Within. And man, you guys just did such a great job with it. I was just listening to it again the other day. I really do enjoy it. And I promise you that I'm not just saying that because we're hanging out in the podcast studio. It really is just a great work of art. And I'm glad that you guys brought that to the world together.
Me too.
And how cool that, I mean, of course, that you've known each other for so long with all the history there.
Yeah, over 10 years.
But it's so nuts. I love it. But so tell me a little bit more about Beacons and about kind of how you guys arrived at where you did and some of the process. And love to hear about it.
So Rob's always been a great piano player, and he's been writing a lot of music for film and television for the time that I've known him. He has a really nice style, like a neoclassical sort of style. And it kind of bridges over in like ambient. And for the last several years, like he's gone and pursued scoring, you know, on his own. And we've always just kind of checked each other's work out. And, there's so many similarities between our sound. Like I like have pianos. Like I don't play piano as well as him at all, but like I lean more into the ambient side than he does. So I'm just like, I do like a lot of the soundscape ambient thing and you do the piano thing really well. Like we should totally work on some music together. And so we did. We just, we went back and forth, just sending stems to each other.
Yeah.
I sent him stems of some different soundscapes. So I had this, I have this device from Soma Labs.
Oh, sure.
It's called the Ether. And it picks up like radio waves.
Yeah.
And you can record it into a Zoom recorder and you can put it up to electronic devices because they're emitting these radio waves and they all have like their different frequencies. So a lot of them have like some sort of pitch.
Right.
So I just had an idea to go around and like record different sounds. Like where I was living, I would kind of walk around with this little device.
Yeah.
And just like some headphones and just record these samples.
That's so cool.
Not all of it is usable. Yeah. Like some of it's really noisy, but there's so many cool textures and like you could find a lot of tones. And once you get into a sampler, you can tune it. You can fine tune it.
Yep.
So I was able to do that. So I made these soundscapes using those sounds as kind of like the parameter that I was working around with. I was just using these samples.
Yeah. What a great place to start.
Yeah. And I was using effects, processing it with effects. But I feel like it was such a kind of like otherworldly sound. I was like, it would complement it really well to have some sort of organic sound instrument that people can recognize. Because I like doing that too. Like I love acoustic pianos just because it balances the synth, sometimes like the really spacey like reverb sounds, the pads.
Yep.
And it's just nice to have that grounding organic thing. So I knew Rob was interested. And so, I sent him some stems and we just put together 4 tracks and
some great stuff. And man,
Thank
you. Honestly, like that work, it shows. I didn't know that process, but the beautiful thing about that is that like listening to Beacons, I can feel your fingerprints on it. Like it very much feels like a signature Jay Cliffen feel. But the thing about it is that it just goes a step beyond kind of a typical like, hey, let me just grab a preset from this synth plugin or let me just whatever, which clearly, of course, that is because you did what you did. You took the Soma piece of gear and you're recording, the frequencies of, and then the message. Like, of course, it sounds different, and you still arrived at something really fresh, really musical. But I love that just the simple act of doing that really does take it beyond sort of where one could typically go. And that doesn't mean that you can't create wonderful things with drag and drop plugins or anything like that, or even having that as a starting point. But really, the way that you took that and use that does this really nice balancing act against what Rob brings to it, not just from the instrument that he's on, but also you kind of knowing the way that Rob approaches the piano, and for you to find a really cool amalgam of the two in the middle. It turned out great. I absolutely love it.
Well, thank you. And just something you mentioned that I think is worth repeating and just encouraging people to do, and I think it's a good practice, is going out there and getting sounds that, like you said, aren't a preset. Like
right,
that they're your own, right? And then you know that no one else is going to have them because like you went out there and recorded that sound. So in this case, like recording these different like radio waves with the ether, I know I'm the only, so that it feels like a bit more special or personal, I guess, that you're the only one with them.
Yeah, it's like a one-of-one painting or something like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, thank you again for all of your time. Before we leave, I do want to hit you with a couple questions from the All Ambient Lightning Round. Is that cool with you? Are you ready for that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, awesome. Let's do it.
Jay, what are you currently geeking out about? It could be gear, it could be a new music release, it could be something around your house, it could be something out, it just whatever you want. But what are you currently geeking out about?
So for the last little while, well, you'll notice that I'm in this room that's, intended to be a studio, but there's no acoustic treatment here. So I put on the echo cancellation, but it's yet. So I'm kind of geeking out on panels like treatment, bass traps and things like that. Because
who are you using?
I play
are
drums
you kind of figuring it out yourself? Or are you building yourself? Or are you going to use a company, or what are you doing?
I want to use a company. I have built my own before.
Yep.
And they definitely worked.
Totally.
I think with the amount of time and like, you know, some of them, like they looked a little wonky. Some of them over time, they started like, leaning a bit. So I was like, be nice to like, this is like my studio for life. You know, I'm not going to be moving. Right. So I'd like to get it done right. So I've been looking to other companies and I found one. So there's a small company in Canada here called Inity. Shout out. Cool. INTY, Inity Acoustics. And I'm gonna give them a call, and I've heard good things. So amazing. That's the project right now.
I can't wait to see how it all comes together, and that's awesome. So when you bought that place, were the walls exposed and you already put the drywall up, or was the drywall already there and you're working on it as the current canvas says that it is? Or tell me about that.
So we built. So I built, like I designed this room. Yeah.
Amazing.
So we built it. Like
Is there stuff in the walls? Like, do you have stuff in the joists and in the wall? Awesome. Very nice.
Yeah. So I did extra insulation in here. Yep. So I also positioned it in like a part of the house where I'm only sharing, this wall behind me is shared with the like living room. So awesome. It's a double wall with staggered studs. And I have like an exterior door, like an airtight door. Just to keep, because I also play drums too. So it's... Yep. But so, and these other corners this is the garage over here, and these two are just exterior. So I live in the country too. So there's no one around to hear anything. You're not having a homeowners association call you and say, hey, Jay, you're making too much noise. No, absolutely not. No, living in the country, I was like, no. Because I've lived in enough like apartments and things where sound's always been an issue, where I was just like, I don't want to have to hear about sound like complaints for the rest of my life. So there you go. You did it. You've achieved it. Oh, that's awesome. Yep. That's a great thing to geek out about. I love that. And I'm excited. I mean, it looks great now, but it'll be really fun to see and also to hear, of course. Because I've been working with headphones in here, which is okay. But I prefer listening on monitors and... Absolutely. Yeah. Fun, man. Love it. Jay, if there was somebody who came up to you and said, man, I love what you have been up to, do you have any advice for me for trying to follow in your footsteps at whatever corner of your artistry or your life or whatever? What advice would you give the person who's looking to follow in your footsteps? Yeah, I think learning as many different skills as you can. Like, like music related and like adjacent to the music, like media, photography and video. Yeah. And I think a lot of people probably intuitively already kind of are, because I think today it's like to do music, you kind of need to like edit your own videos and like do your own artwork. Like, yeah. So I think just learning as much as you can about these different and getting like proficient, because you never know where it'll lead to. Right. Like you might end up doing like video work or for like maybe other artists or yourself. And like, you'll still do your music thing, but like having those other skills is just more ways to earn a living doing the arts. Yeah. Rather than just being like, I'm only going to do music and I can only make my money from that. It's like, it can be kind of limiting and maybe you will, but I think having these different places that you can earn a living from, if that's what you want to do. Yeah. Learning skills and writing grants. Like I know in Canada, there's a lot of grants for artists. And I know grants applications suck and no one wants to do those. But if you do them, you can write them for yourself to help get funding for your albums. And if you get good at them, you can write them for other people. Sure. Interesting. Yeah. So that's something I've done a lot of as well. Oh, that's a really cool thing. Well, and even that kind of dovetails with a sidebar conversation we were having before we hit the record button, but just the idea of taking breaks from music in the sense of, you were talking about, just working on the home and all the landscaping and all that stuff, and just kind of breathing from music, and how sometimes by doing those other things can actually bring more focus to, or just, a new wave of inspiration or a new, level of energy to music when you do get the chance to come back. And I think playing around in the other kind of avenues of media and whatnot can also do the same thing. Like it's great to learn those skills and the different ways that those can perhaps play into the ecosystem, but also, and this is just how it struck me, is how that can also play into just
getting you re-energized and ready to dive back into music when you have that chance as well. So it can be a refreshing thing to go after the other media and then watch how that impacts your music in a great way, instead of what one might assume as, well, if you're not spending as much time in music, your music's not going to advance as much as if you were just all in. It's like, well, I see that to some degree, but also like my brain needs a break. So both and I think. Yeah.
Because I used to put like kind of pressure on myself to release like as many things in a year, like as I could. Like,
sure. Yeah.
I would always be trying to release like 2 things a year. And it's like, if you're putting that kind of pressure on yourself, it can be kind of stressful. Like I don't think, for me personally, that kind of pressure doesn't help what I'm making. Like, it's kind of like, I'm just kind of maybe putting out stuff that I shouldn't be putting out. Like, I'm just trying to curate what I'm putting out a little bit more. And it's like, not every idea needs to be released.
Yeah.
You can make a bunch of like, I'll make a bunch of stuff. Yeah. It's like, why am I forcing myself to make like a 10-song album or something?
Yeah.
Where everything is like a great track, where it's like, maybe I can take 10 of those tracks and pick like 4 of the best ones. And then it'll be a really, really strong EP. Like, it's like, it's not that people are expecting you to put out an album, or it's like, you can just basically put out your best work.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. Yeah. And not to rush it. Like,
that's a good word, man. In this day and age when it kind of feels like the overall move for a lot of people would be to publish a boatload and rush through it, I think it's great to be reminded that there are other ways to do it, and there are other ways to be successful and do it. And it's a great reminder. And also just not just for success, but for your health, for your mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, like just your well-being, to take that off your shoulders a little bit, to give yourself some freedom. That's a big deal. So I love that.
Yeah. And there might be people out there that are just making tons of great stuff like very frequently, and they can release that, and and that's great. It's like, I guess it's kind of finding your pace, like whether it's one release a year or one release every 2 years or whatever it is, or every month.
Love it. Yeah, seriously, every 4 days it seems like. No. Oh, Jay, I love that, man, and that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Jay, thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom. Man, honestly, I love that we're just kind of part of this extended, artist family together. And man, just thank you for just speaking into not just your process, but bringing a lot of inspiration for a lot of others. And can't wait to see everything that is up next. And man, thanks again for being
my pleasure.
And be a podcast.
Thanks,
so
Mike.
Good.
Thanks Echoes Blue for all the streams. I'm loving the success that we're seeing from the release. It's
absolutely
great.
Absolutely. Thank you again for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Music throughout today's episode was all from the catalog of Jay Cliffen. And you can find all of this music along with a bunch of other incredible songs, bundles, and other resources from an amazing group of composers and producers at all-ambient.com. And be sure to use the promo code podcast25. That's podcast25. And you'll get 25% off of any product at all-ambient.com. It's a great opportunity to save even more on an incredible resource for your next film, video, or project. Don't wait for another second. Head over to allambient.com and use promo code podcast25. Again, that's podcast25 to get 25% off of your next purchase. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time. I hope that you are too. Can't wait to see you then. And until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping that this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. See you next time.